welcome. My name is Lloyd Borrell. I'm your host. Today, I'm thrilled to have as my guest Dr. Gaetan Chevalier. Dr. Chevalier received his PhD from the University of Montreal in atomic physics and laser spectroscopy. He's currently lead faculty at the Californian Institute for Human Science, visiting scholar in the Department of Family Medicine and Public Health at UCSD, and director of the Earthing Institute since 2007. Dr. Gaetan, welcome to the EMF Health Summit.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you on. So I'd like to start first just simply by asking you, what is earthing and why is it important?
First question, earthing. What is earthing? Earthing is the reconnecting with the surface of the earth. It's basically to be in physical contact with the surface of the earth, body contact, not like mental and meditation, but we're talking about being in contact physically with the body, with the earth, the body in contact with the earth. And why is that important? Is that we realize in this society that people have a lot of problems that seems now the science, medical science, has recognized that many of those old age diseases are related to inflammation. Like, for example, they know many cancers have a component of inflammation. So is the case for arthritis, all autoimmune diseases, including even cardiovascular problems. And so why is this so? We look back, actually, Clint Ober, the rediscoverer of this important information, if you will, realized himself that he had problems, but having been in the industry, the cable industry, TV cable, when the TV cable were starting, they realized that the cables to function properly needed to be shielded, and the shield had to be grounded. So he wondered if it was not the same case for human beings. We're all walking, in shoes that are of, plastic or rubber-like sole. We live in apartment and houses built from wood. And so he just tried it on himself, having himself some issues, and found out that his problems, he needed medication to go to sleep. And he found out that that night that he grounded himself, he slept very well, and he forgot to take his medication. And so he started with other people, some friends that he knew had some inflammatory problems, and they too had a good response.
Okay.
And that was the start of the spreading of the earthing. And maybe we can go a little bit in Yes.
So, and I've read the book. It's a great book, Earthing.
Thank you.
I think it's called.
Yes.
And it's a great story. Because he went through a lot, didn't he, Clint Ober?
Yes.
A lot of he was a very successful businessman, and then he kind of left his home luxurious home with mountain views, and decided just to set off in his motorhome and sort of discover, ponder, contemplate. So there's quite an amazing story behind this.
Yes. And the reason why he did that is because himself he experienced a difficult health challenge where his liver got infected from a root canal process, and that almost killed him. So that's what made him rethink, his life and where he wants to go.
Yes.
And it was just, like you said, he sold everything and went into a mobile home and traveled across America and find some answers. And he was in Sedona at some point where he was sitting on a bench park and he saw everybody was, having running shoes and just thought about his work as a cable industry person and thought about his problems. And that's where he had this idea. I mean, why did he stumble upon this idea is another story.
Yeah.
But the fact that he did is pretty interesting. And the fact that he had the means to spread the words and go around was a very important factor, because he's the one who came to where I was doing research and convinced me basically of this.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because you've got quite an impressive background, University of Montreal, atomic physics, and I guess you're rather an unlikely candidate to be speaking about Earthing, it seems anyway, looking at what I've seen of your bio. And so, if you could perhaps address that, how did you discover Earthing? What brought you, what turned you on this?
Yeah, it's more that Earthing discovered me because I was director of research in a private school in California, in San Diego area. And it just happened, for which reason I'm not sure, but that Tintober gave a lecture in our university about the benefits of being in contact with the Earth. So my first reaction was, that's an interesting concept, but it's such an easy concept, that it would have been discovered 100 years ago. I wonder why it hasn't been, discovered before. I didn't know that it was actually, but that's another story. So I left it there. And but one of his associates, we were an open private college, in the sense that we're open to new ideas. We were studying, for example, the meridian system and many traditional Chinese medicine modalities, as well as even being open, to Ayurvedic medicine. And we were doing basic research on developing new instruments. In any case, one of his associates came to me and said, we would like, for you to do a research on Earthing. It looks like you have the instruments and you would be, able to do a good project. And I said, we'll be happy to do that. And so we did a research project for them. And using some novel equipment from Japan to measure the flow of energy in the meridians. We also use conventional measures such as brainwave, muscle tension, heart rate, skin conductance, surface skin temperature, respiration rate, all of these stuff. And we found, to my astonishment, that there were dramatic changes in brainwave function. The brain calmed down tremendously. We found even a new effect that never been mentioned in any textbook about muscle tension. That the muscle tension regulate became about the same on everyone. We measured trapezius muscle at the on the shoulders basically, and it's a muscle that carries a lot of tension on many people. It's commonly used in electrophysiology to measure the level of stress a person has. So we measured that, and we found that those who had a stress there, the stress decreased, so the muscle tension decreased. Some few people who are very depressed and their tension was very low, the tension increased. And we found also that there was a renewed connection between the autonomic nervous system function and the muscle tension, which was not described before. So that was kind of interesting that we found those things.
Okay.
I was not convinced yet because I thought...
I was going to say, because as I understand it, initially you were rather skeptical about this.
Yeah. So I was skeptical because of its simplicity. Actually, it's because, wow, this is so simple. Should have been.
So in fact, you were doing this as much to out of your own personal curiosity to see. Well,
but it was also funded. It was also it's part of being the director of research at the institute. The institute was willing, if he was willing to fund the research, it was willing to do it. So it was an institutional research. It was not like me on the side doing this just to see if it works. It was really like part of the institute functions that we offered a service for new inventors to check, their inventions. And so we were at the time open to this. But this project, although intrigued me, did not convince me completely. The reason is that the equipment that we were using to measure electrophysiological function was also grounded. And so I thought that, what if there was a loop of current or something? So I was intrigued. We were seeing, something that would be interesting to replicate. And later we did. We purchased a more sophisticated equipment. The data acquisition was isolated, so everything with the amplifiers and everything were actually battery powered. The signal was transferred to a computer by optical cables. So everything was kosher, and we did the project again, and we got at least as good results. Then we had a few patients coming in, also a few people. Some of them were my friends. One of my friends had bad arthritis in the hands. He was hiding it very well because I didn't know. But when we were there, he said, we asked him if he had a problem. He said, I have arthritis of my thumbs. And so we asked him if he would be willing to be grounded and see what happened. He said yes. So before grounding him, we asked him, what is your level of pain now in your thumbs? And he said, from 0, being no pain, to 10 being I want to jump off a bridge. He said 8. I was surprised because 8 is like, very high. He said, yes, I'm used to live this way because nothing, curb the pain. I take pain medication. It's not very effective. So we grounded him, put patches on his hands, and waited to talk to him about 45 minutes. And then we said, how is your pain now? And he said, oh, that's interesting. It's down to about 2 or 3. And he said, nothing does that normally. It's pretty amazing. So in AC, the research doing good results, my friend having good results. And then this lady with multiple sclerosis came in, and she was desperate. She could not use her left arm. It was twitching all the time. Very pale, maybe about 45 years old. She went in just to try it. So after an hour of grounding, she said, I need to use the bathroom. So she went to the bathroom and came back all excited. And she put her hands like this. She says, my face. I said, my face? Well, what about your face? My face is pink. It's beautiful again. But she was doing that with your 2 arms. And I said, well, to me, my arms would be a little more important. She regained control of her arm in an hour. I thought that was interesting. So from there on, I pretty much became a believer.
Right.
Based on the evidence was too overwhelming.
Right. So that was the beginning of this. So that's what I'd like to talk about now, is about the science, because it is a controversial subject, and we'll get onto the controversy afterwards. But let's talk about the science first, if we can, because I have interviewed you before. The last time we spoke, as I recall, you said to me there were 19 peer-reviewed studies, and obviously peer-reviewed studies, that's like the gold standard in terms of studies. So, where are we now on this?
We are at 23, and we attracted a lot more attention, so we have more studies in the making.
So 23 peer-reviewed?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have now studies going on hypertension. So we're going more into the different disease and problems now that we have understood the basics. So the first maybe 10, 12 studies were really to help us understand what was going on, was really impacting inflammation. was really earthing impacting different diseases. What were the counterindications? There are counterindications. If you are a patient and you are on medication, you need to check with your doctor, especially if you are on blood thinners, thyroid, thyroid medication, and also anti-inflammatory medication, to name a few. Grounding, earthing, although it's natural, we're not used to live that way. Our physiology is different than the indigenous people that live grounded all the time. And we have to take that into account.
So we're no longer used to living this way. Therefore, the medication, what you're saying is certain medications can be upregulated because of this grounding effect. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
Upregulated.
Yeah.
Yep. So we need, and that's why, we have, people having, different effects. There's another problem also is that many people come to try earthing. They are desperate. They are tried the mainstream medical science, and they have not had, good results. Consequently, their situation is very dire. And earthing may help them, and sometimes may not. Also, it might be too late. Some of them also may be helped, but they're gonna get through what we call a healing crisis. They're gonna feel like more pain. I remember this person who had his legs were becoming black. He had no circulation in the leg, and necrosis of the legs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty bad. So he started grounding, putting his feet on the mat, and started to have like very real pain in his legs. And said, I'm stopping doing this. I mean, it's too painful. But Clint convinced him to continue. And by, continuing through the pain, he started realizing that it's actually healing. And then he got back some sensation in his legs, and it was helpful. But, sometimes some people will have bad reaction in the beginning for some reason, and they throw it out. Another reason could be that they use, the power outlet, and houses are not always connected properly. You cannot always use the power outlet of your house. You have to check it first. Make sure it is. And if it's not, use a rod, plant it outside. Or if you live a climate that allow it, just go barefoot. I'm not here to sell products. Yep. Although, the products help us to be able to continue our mission. I'm the scientist. I'm the director of the Earthing Institute. And my job is really to get the word out, to get the studies, to get people interested in earthing in a natural way. And knowing that nothing is perfect, that everything we have to do it cautiously. We have to know what we're doing, and we have to check to make sure that we're not doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be so simple. You go out barefoot and you're grounded. But today it's a little more complicated because of the society we live in. And, we have, medication, and we also have, region of the soil now that as is spread with pesticide, or some other regions with bugs or other things. Just have to pay attention to all of these things.
So, okay, great.
Yes.
So, sorry, if I can just wind back just to address one thing that you mentioned there is that if you're grounding in a home, that you get your electrical system checked. Because you're connecting, what you're saying is you're connecting your grounding appliance, whatever it is, device, to the ground terminal on your electrical outlet. And so can you just develop on that, on what the issue is there?
Yes. There's some issues with that, in that I'm more familiar with North America, so I'm going to speak about what's happening in North America, and I'm sure there's some similarities with other countries. So the grounding wire was added about in the 70s because people were electrocuted by their appliances. That grounding wire basically connect to the case of, let's say, take a toaster, for example. So you have the inside as eye current and stuff, and the outside now is grounded so that you don't get a shock, and so that's what it is for most appliances. That grounding wire is actually connected through all the grounding wires are connected to grounding rods in the house. The modern houses have many grounding rods. One of the drawback is that there's one point where the grounding system is connected to the neutral. It's at the mains where the electricity gets in, and that is necessary for protection. That's why we need many grounding rods to keep the voltage very low. And it's less than 1 volt, and it's very, very small. And I've been using it for, 10, 15 years, no problem. People who are electro-hypersensitive cannot use that. They have to ground themselves outside. Okay? The other problem sometimes also is that the electrician do not pay total attention to that. And sometimes they will connect the neutral and the return wire. They will connect them all the places, or they will even reverse them. Then you cannot use, and then you'll have some bad issues with that. So you don't want that. These are the warnings, to use the power outlet. You have to have it checked. You can buy power outlet checkers that will check you have a good ground, but you cannot check with them that the voltage is low enough, on your. So you plug it in. You try it. If it works for you, good. If not, you have any doubt, don't use it. Go and use a rod planted outside, and there are companies that sell earthing system with a ground rod already, so you can do that.
Right.
It's very simple, unless you live in a high-rise building. But usually, high-rise building have good grounds. But you have also to have that check.
So ideally, we need to get an electrician in to check
yes.
level of the voltage is on there. And what level are we talking about? So what's safe?
Safe 1-2 volts.
1 to 2.
If you have 1-2 volts, very safe. The IEEE, the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers in the United States, and it's worldwide. They consider they have a regulation that states that if it's below 10 volts, it's acceptable. But like for example, you can buy 9 volts battery, and I've heard anybody being injured by a 9 volt battery. So this is the same thing. It's about the same level. So that's not dangerous. But electro-hypersensitive people, what they will feel is they will feel the frequencies on that, because it's not AC. It's not DC like a battery. It's AC.
Yes.
So these people, I met some of them. So they're in poor health, especially what they are is their entire system is stressed out. Their autonomic nervous system is out of control. Their adrenal glands are blown up. And although these people need to be grounded, they need to be grounded properly in an environment where there's no EMF, as much as possible. They cannot stay that.
Yes.
But for normal people, no problem. I've been doing that for years. And I have some personal, situation that happened. They're small, but that tells me that, earthing is a good protection. I have no pain anywhere. That's another thing, is that most pains that are really painful are inflammatory pain. And those pains, that's the one that earthing prevents best. So it's a guarantee against excruciating pain in your future. So
Yes.
You can't buy that anywhere.
Yeah. So if we could just try and summarize maybe what the science is saying. So these 23 peer-reviewed studies, as you say, in terms of what the biological effects on the human body. Could you just briefly just summarize that for us? So obviously the most important one is the inflammation. That's
the most important one.
Yeah, because inflammation is seen as by many doctors, scientists, has been at the root of a whole load of diseases. Agreed?
Yes.
So that's really the most important one. So beyond that, so we've got the autonomous nervous system also.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, when you ground yourself, what we found is the first body system to respond is the autonomic nervous system. Within a second, the autonomic nervous system readjusts itself. And so that means the system is aware that now the body is grounded.
So there's a shift from perhaps sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic dominance?
Yes. There's a shift towards that direction. It's not always directly going into parasympathetic dominance, but it's going in that direction. Right. And what happens after that, if the person is grounded for about 20 to 30 minutes, then some physiological changes happen. It's like the nervous system in the brain, because the brain is part of the nervous system, saying, okay, we have now access to the earth and the electrons for long enough, we can start using it. It's, and they start trying to quench inflammation and other painful situations. Another point also, there's a couple of other points that earthing does. One is that it serves as a reference point for the bioelectrical systems that we have. We are bioelectrical beings. That's why we have nervous system and we have, electricity working in us all the time. When we're not grounded, it's like having an electronic machine without a proper ground. So the electronics start to work strangely. And the body is very sophisticated. It will create internally some kind of a virtual grounding point, which normally is in the bones. And then, but after a certain while, the bones will be providing the missing electrons we're trying to keep. That's why osteoporosis and stuff like this also help with earthing. And that's why we do have osteoporosis and stuff like that. The bones are used to help the body to create a virtual, ground. So it works for so long. After a certain time, something breaks, and in one of the system that really needs that ground to differentiate what is self versus non-self is the immune system. So because of this lack of firm potential differences, the immune system start to lose the connection or the information that it needs to determine what is self and non-self. And so you start to get autoimmune diseases. So it's not an inflammatory base, this one. It's based on a bioelectrical situation. Mm-hmm. So that's another important. Mm-hmm. A third one is that being connected with the earth connect us to the frequencies of the earth. For example, we talk about the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is outside, and that's 7.8 hertz. And we used to bathe in that frequency. And that's why our brain works best when we are at 7.8 hertz. People are calm. That's exactly in the alpha state. That's the way we're supposed to function. When we are at home, our homes prevent the 7.8 hertz from coming to us. But when we're grounded, it gets through the ground anyway. So we found also that people who travel a lot, if they put their feet on the local ground for about an hour, half an hour to an hour, their system reset themselves and they don't have the jet lag. Yeah. So, there's a few things that earthing does that are very beneficial, and that we didn't even know that we were losing slowly, by not being grounded.
Yeah. So lots of benefits, and short-term, as I see it, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So we've got some initial benefits. We've got some benefits after, as you say, 20 to 30 minutes. And then we've got some longer-term benefits. And it obviously, we're generalizing because it depends on different people. Different people react in different ways. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So everybody has to look at their situation. And if they are electro-hypersensitive, they're going to have to ground themselves in a remote area. They can go in Jodrell Bank. Jodrell Bank is a radio telescope in England. And because it's such because a radio telescope and it measure radio waves from space, they cannot have any radio waves in 100 miles in the area. And so a lot of hypersensitive people are gathered there because there's no radiation at all. So there's some places they can go, but if they ground themselves and they get good nutrition and stuff like that, they should be able to repair their body system and get back to normal life and keep themselves grounded even in the presence of normal levels of EMFs. It will not bother them.
Okay. So let's talk about the controversy a moment. So we touched on it earlier. So there are certain experts, that scientists and researchers, which are saying that you should not ground Earth under any circumstances in North America because of this return current that you were talking about before. This where the utility companies, they're not using a wire. This has been going on since the 1970s, I believe. They're using the physical Earth as the return path for the electrical current, the AC alternating electrical current, which we have in our homes. And so, can I ask you, what do you say to that?
I have two responses to that. Is that I check myself the code, and I check, I with certain other experts, electricians, and they're using what they call the SARE, where they use the single wire return current. It's used in some rural area in America, but it's forbidden in urban areas. And they know that this is there've been some problems with that in the past. And so in your urban area, and most area where people go, where there are houses and it's like even a small city, this is forbidden. And that's why you have the neutral, which is the return wire that connect to the power outside. There's a return wire in most of the homes that goes back to the power line, and it's not going through the earth. The connection of the neutral and the ground to the earth at the mains is a security feature. It's if a wire on one of the power lines cuts off for some reason, and there's high voltage or something, then this ensures protection. Okay, yes. It grounds everything. But that said, the earth, has more resistance. They offer more resistance than the neutral wire that goes to return to the company. And that is the normal and preferential way. There's still a very, very small current that will go there, like 1,000 or 100 of 1,000. But our experience is that has not caused problems. Tons of people, including me, are grounded in a urban area with no problem. Tons of people. The experience is there. I mean, you can try it for yourself. The best way is try it for yourself. If something doesn't work, try the ground outside. Now, I would try. The only thing I would say is that don't put the ground rod close to the mains because of the ground wire there. Just use any other place and you should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So there's little things like that, but
because
for the most part, it's still very, very important to be there.
Right, because what we can say with certainty is that those AC, and I hear what you're saying with respect to urban areas and non-urban areas, but we can say in any case that those frequencies, that AC current, it is in the earth. We can measure it. They've measured it. We can measure it with a telescope. It's easy to measure. But so the controversy is not there. The controversy is in what's the so what? The question, so what? Okay, it's there, but what's the effect on your health? And that is the controversy. Are we agreed?
Yeah. So the controversy is that what's the effect if you're in your health? And that's what we're saying is that, for example, it's similar to having 2 volts on using the ground hole, of your house and having 1 or 2 volts there. Some people will claim that it's bad for you and that it will hurt you in the long run. That is true for people, and they found that it's true for some people, and I agree. It's true from people who have health compromise, are electrohypersensitive, or close to be. So people who are sick, who are deprived, who have not a normal functioning life, yes, they cannot use that. They can ground outside, though the voltage will be much lower outside than it is, in the house. And we found good results. Worst case scenario, if you're electrohypersensitive and extremely, you'll have to find an area where you can measure in the ground that there's no current. But our experience is that, for example, I lived in an apartment complex for some time, and I was on the 2nd floor, so I had a rod coming down to planted in the ground close to the building, and I was grounded that way, and it worked very well. And I was there for 10 years, no problem. Now I am in a different place where I use the ground outlet. It's a more recent building. I've been using it, and I sleep very well. It works very well. Right. So you just have to make sure that you use the needed precaution. Get an electrician to check your grounding system in the house. You may even have that electrician look at the outside, where is the mains, and not be close to the mains. Normally, if you're not close to the main, within like 3 feet of the main, 10 feet of the mains or more, there's no problem. I measured myself, for a big school, which had a lot of power. And we found effectively that there's some voltage in the ground, which decreased pretty rapidly if you go away from the mains. It was not humongous. I think it was like 5 volts or 6 volts, which for normal people is not a problem. I mean, we have batteries, 9 volts battery, and put your fingers on there and you're not going to have a problem. I know they say it's AC, it's different, but it's still 9 volts, So it depends on your health condition. The more sick you are, the more beneficial earthing is. The more important that you get, a grounding system that that is going to provide you with, the electrons you need and the healing that you need.
Yes. Okay. So for those people that are scientifically minded, could you explain how we can measure this effect in terms of the voltage and the current on our body? Doing that?
Yes. So one of the simple tests, and I don't know it's been criticized, but the critics have misunderstood a few things in my opinion. But anyway, one of the simple tests is when you're grounded is you use a voltmeter in the AC mode and you measure the voltage on your body. Of course, you have to have a ground. Best way is to have your grounding, your voltmeter grounded outside grounding rod, so that you're not doing a closed circuit where it's going to be sure you see nothing because it's a closed circuit. So you just want to be grounded outside.
So
that's one of the criticisms.
Can you just walk us through? So you've got the voltmeter there, and it can be a multimeter measuring in millivolts, which most of them are now.
Yeah, and make sure it's an AC, because you can have DC and AC.
Then we've got the red lead and the black lead. Can you explain?
Yeah. The black lead should be connected to a ground outside.
Right.
Okay, a good ground outside. The red lead, you should be touching it. You're holding it in your hand. And then you have your grounding system that is connected to a good ground. Okay, you can ground it directly to the earth. If you ground it directly to the earth, then your body voltage, of course, because your voltmeter is connected out to the ground also, should get to zero or very close.
Right. So what you're saying is you're holding the red in your hand, you've got the black connected to the actual ground on the post, which is in the earth via a wire. And then you would, for instance, sit on your grounding mat and not sit on it and see what the reading is on your voltage meter.
Be not grounded, see what the reading is. The reading is, when you're not grounded, is the impact of the electromagnetic field at 60 hertz in your environment on your body. Basically, what it does is that it creates an electric field at the surface of your skin, which wiggle your electrons, and that's what is seen as a voltage. It's an AC voltage. Okay? Sure. When you ground yourself, this AC voltage goes to zeros because the electrons of the earth come in and basically block the electric field from coming in. And so it is reflected outside. And so that is why you can tell how good the reflection of the EMF in your environment is by how low the voltage goes. Mm-hmm. The closer to zero, the best.
The better.
Yeah. And now, some expert will say but it doesn't stop the magnetic field. The magnetic field penetrates everything, and it's true. Like even in a Faraday cage, for example, this is like what I'm describing is a Faraday cage effect. It's true for Faraday cage too, that the magnetic field penetrates. That's why many of the Faraday cage do not plug low frequency EMFs. But the body does, and we know that because doctors did experiment and they put probes and electrodes inside people, and they measure, their electrostatic that they would generate or EMF coming in, and they found nothing penetrates. So that means that the body acts also as a mu metal cage. And what that is that we have iron in our blood. We have particles that are able to respond to magnetic field and blocks the magnetic field too.
Okay.
That's a new information I haven't shared so far that much because there's so much information. But I had this criticism that the magnetic field penetrates. But we do have experimental evidence showing that it does not penetrate the body, that the body is protected
by the iron, which is in the body, which is in the blood, and which is throughout the body.
Yeah, it helps prevent the... that's our hypothesis, because we know for a fact it doesn't penetrate. And so our hypothesis is that we have enough iron in the body and other ferromagnetic material that responds to the magnetic field, that the shielding is still good.
Okay, so that's so we talked about how to measure the voltage. What about the current? Can we measure the current too?
Very difficult. In fact, I'm working with the University of New Hampshire to measure the current. The reason why it's so difficult is because the current first is in the nanoamps. So that means 1 billionth finamp. And you can see that only after being very careful to eliminate any source of static electricity. Static electricity, and there's a paper published on that by a researcher at the University of New Hampshire, showing that he couldn't see anything because static electricity was overwhelming, So it's a very tricky process. We are in the process of doing that, but measuring the current is very difficult because the transfer of electrons is in the nanoamps. Now, if you think about this, this is very small nanoamps. But in terms of number of electrons, which still in the billions that coming in, because there's 1 amps is about 10 to the 18 electrons per second. So it's a lot of electrons. So and that's maybe a reason why also we found that if you have pain somewhere, you have inflammation of the joint or something, put a patch there. You'll get a much faster resolution, because if you are grounded through the feet, well, the electrons are used, they go up, but they are quenching all kind of problems the person may have along the path. And you will eventually get a relief from that, maybe like 30 minutes or an hour later. But I mean, if you put the patch there, that's where we found that the electrons go first, and that's where they're going to try to heal first. So there is a virtue in grounding the area of inflammation first.
And so you mentioned static electricity. If we could just talk about that briefly, because that's another phenomena, isn't it? And we've all felt that. We all feel that. I feel it. For instance, in France, I live in France, and we kiss a lot. The men kiss, and so you go to somebody and you get this static electricity.
Yeah, you touch a doorknob and suddenly you get a shock.
Yeah,
that's static electricity.
So how does that factor in with this earthing? With this practice of earthing?
Yeah. So some people misunderstand static electricity. They think that we exchange both negative and positive charge and stuff. That's not true. What's happening in static electricity is most of the time, let's say you walk on in a dry climate on a carpet, okay? Well, what's happening is that it's not you gain the electron from the carpet. Unfortunately, most of the time, when you get static electricity build up in your body, it's because you lose electrons and you become charged positively 99% of the time. And some people don't understand this. And there was a criticism of said, I don't need to be grounded to be charged myself. I just touch a knob. No, you're not getting enough electrons. When you touch a knob, yes, you're charged positively, and the knob is not charged as positively. And so you get a discharge. But you get a few electrons coming in here, and that's exactly what the discharge does not kill you, because you have to understand that you can build up 35,000 volts on your body when just static electricity. I mean, the power is only 120 volts. How come you're not dead when you touch the knob? It's because the current, the amount of electrons that are transferred is very small. So that's not going to recharge you. It's going to, to be fully recharged, you need to be grounded. That's why people...
That's pretty scary.
Yeah. But that's natural. That's the way we live all the time.
Yeah.
You touch at your door, for example, the car door, you get a shock also. And sometimes, you feel it very strongly.
Yeah.
That's because we're not grounded. If you can't feel that, it's not happening when you're grounded all the time.
So this is, when this happens, you should take this as a reminder to ground. If
exactly.
This is happening a lot, if you get a lot of static electricity build-up, shocks, then this is an indication, is it not, that you need to ground or earth more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because just to address that, because I just said ground or earth, because we kind of use these interchangeably, don't we?
Yes, we do, especially in North America.
We tend to use the term ground more for the electrical system, and earth for this practice that we do that Clint Hilbert.
Yeah, that's the reason why the book is called Earthing. It's just to say that it's about human beings in contact with the earth, not about grounding your, refrigerator or something.
Okay. So, best ways to earth.
Number one, best way, being naked in the ocean. So you can't do that really. I mean, I live in California. I live close to the beach, and I can see those people or the surfers, they go at 6 a.m. No matter the temperature may be only like 45 degrees. So that means what? Maybe like 10 degrees Celsius. And those people go out there and they are in swimsuit, but they love, yeah, and they feel great. He said, I don't know, but when I go to go surfing, my day is great. I have lots of energy. It's because the best way of earthing. You have three advantages. You're grounded. You're doing exercise. You have the sunlight also that gives you vitamin D, and I mean it's a very great combination. There's no doubt, being on the beach, and that's why we feel so low going to the beach too. I'm sorry.
You got the girls on the beach too.
Exactly. So we've got everything. Nothing else missing. So that's why, and also the oceans themselves, because they're charged negatively, because of the water is conductive because it has salts in it, you get negative ions coming from the ocean. So when you're breathing the air, you still get some negative charge in the ions, because most of the time the air is charged positive. And that is another subject, is how the earth works. Earth is the surface of the earth itself is a battery. The surface of the earth is the negative pole. The ionosphere, 60 miles up, where the sun ionized the gas, is the positive charge one. And it's the energy of the sun that always replenish, the electrons from the earth and maintain the earth as a battery. And we evolve in that battery. And we need that energy, and we have the Schumann resonance, and we have the grounding and the electrons coming there. That's natural environment we evolved with.
So if we could list up, have a hierarchy of earthing, the top would be, number one, would be naked in the sea, and variations of that, obviously, with to remain decent, in the interest of decency,
right?
A wetsuit or some trunks or a bathing costume. Right. So that would be number one.
Number one.
Number two would be going barefoot.
Yeah, barefoot in the grass, wet grass. Like, for example, there's another thing that I think they do more in Europe, is that there's this thing in going early in the morning, bare feet in the grass with the dew. And there's known to be some benefits to that, and it's true. Now we understand.
I do that every morning.
Oh, good. Good. You look healthy. And that's the second one. And there's even the alchemist who said you have to get the water from the dew to get your alchemy or whatever. But there's some mythology, and we understand why. It's because it's a very good way of grounding. And the more you're in contact, like you do go picnic and you lay down, in shorts and no top, you lay on the ground, and it recharges you. It's probably the second best one. Yeah.
So the swimming in the sea, the going barefoot, variations of that, walking in the dew in the morning, on the grass. And then really we're looking at, and then we've got wearing, it's difficult to give an exact hierarchy, but a broad hierarchy. Wearing, earthing shoes.
Wearing earthing shoes is good.
Yeah.
Or sandals.
Yeah. Earthing sandals, yeah.
There are some companies now that make earthing shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got some?
Yeah.
Yeah. So earthing. The other thing is the surface. You can have, like, for example, you can walk on cement. Most of the cements has moist underneath, unless you are in Arizona and desert places. It's okay. Asphalt is not. Asphalt is made of petroleum, and it will absolutely isolate you. That black asphalt that is used in the streets, some places, it will not ground you. Wood would not ground you. Rubber will not ground you. Plastic will not ground you. You have like plastic sandals; they're not grounding you. Normal soils will ground you. in general, especially humid soils like most places in Europe, the soil is very good. It's kind of moist, some moisture to it.
Right.
There's some dry places in California and Arizona where you really get no benefits.
Right.
But, in general, you get, and that's why we evolved that way.
So in the hierarchy, we've got these external means of doing it outside, methods of earthing, and then we're really what's below that, what's less good, but can still be very beneficial. All the different means of doing it indoors, with, for instance, the grounding mats, the grounding sheets, so on and so forth, where you're either connecting to your electrical outlet if you've had it checked, or you're connecting to this ground rod outdoors. And so anything you want to say on that in terms of practices, because perhaps if you could comment on the practice of sleeping on a sheet, on an earthing sheet.
That's what I've been doing for the past since 2000, past at least 12 years. This is very good. Then the advantage of sleeping grounded is, you do nothing. You just go sleep and you get grounded for 7 hours. You get enough grounded for the rest of the day. If you're a healthy person, that's all you need. You don't even have to think about grounding during the day. But I do. I actually I am on my computer right now, and I have a grounding mat under my, down on the ground, and I do have my keyboard here on top of another grounded mat. So I try to be grounded as much as possible, even though I know that that's one of the easiest way. You want to have enough grounding and make sure you're okay. Sleep grounded for.
Yes.
Even if you sleep 4 hours a night, that's enough.
Yeah.
We have a lady who had 80 years old lady who had a sore on an ankle that would not heal. And all she did is get an hour treatment, forgot if it's 3 or 5 times a week, and it start healing.
Yes.
So you don't have, if you're relatively healthy, you don't have to worry too much about having to ground so much time, It's just if you have certain diseases. For example, we know from multiple sclerosis people, they need a lot of grounding. They're going to make improvement. If they ground 4 or 5 hours, they're going to make improvement. But if they really want, to function normally like everybody, at least for some time along, they need about to ground 16 hours a day. So there have some special cases where people with diseases, the more they ground, the more benefits they have. There's no contraindication. I don't think that exists. But the reverse is rather true. People don't ground anymore, and they have all kind of autoimmune disease and a disease spread, due to even Alzheimer's has inflammation base. Even for children, autism apparently has some inflammation now. Some new research shows. So
there's really a long list because, as you say, there's so many diseases which are inflammation based. There really is a very long list, and as you've mentioned, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, autism. And obviously the obvious ones, any kind of injury, physical injury.
Wound healing. For example, people at the Tour de France, there was this guy who went through a windshield, and he said, "No way, this guy is going to compete." And the guy in charge, who was grounding, was an expert in grounding at the time. He's part of the team. I'm just blocking on his name. He said, "Give me 24 hours." So 24 hours, what he did, he wrapped this guy into, it's like a grounding sheet. And then he placed patches, the grounding patches are really the lowest resistance. Place patches all around the wound. Of course, after the doctors saw the whole thing together, And within 24 hours, the docs came and they looked at it and said, it's healed enough, he can continue. So he continued his race. So there's a lot of benefits of being grounded. And some people said, oh, well, there's so much benefits. That sounds like a universal panacea. You have to be careful of universal panacea. Nothing is universal panacea. But, it's like we need the vitamins. They do a lot for us. And they can help us function well. So we need vitamin G, ground.
Vitamin G.
It's the same thing, It's not a miracle. It's just the way we're built.
Yeah,
it's like a car. You don't give it gas, you give water instead. You have all kind of problems, and then suddenly gas fiddle it. Oh, gas! It repairs the whole thing, gets the car going. It's a miracle. It can't be. No, it's the way things work. You just need to understand how things work.
So, vitamin G, as you say. And just very lastly, because we're running out of time, but I just want you to address this question on grounding or earthing in a high EMF environment. So that's to say, what I mean is, where perhaps there's Wi-Fi and computers in an office, for instance.
Yes.
Have we got, in terms of the studies, how clear is this question?
Okay, this question is not totally clear. I do know that, cell phones, for example, they are in the microwave range. So we know we cook water, you can cook water, so it can be good. So I'm totally in agreement with minimizing our exposures to EMF. But some people go all the way that you can't get grounded if you have any EMF around you. Well, that I would say this is true if you are electro-hypersensitive person, but for a normal person, no, you get lots of benefits. You get almost the same benefit in normal environment with EMF present in your house. You ground yourself. You're not a path less, some people say big current coming through and you get zapped. That's ridiculous. That's not happening. What's happening, it's because they think of EMF, like current of charge. That's a misunderstanding. There's no charge in EMF. EMF are just what they say, electromagnetic field. There's no electric charge. You cannot be zapped by an EMF alone. What EMF can do is they can, if they're very strong, make your electrons inside move very, very fast and very strongly. But they're not made of electrons in any way or charges. So that's a misunderstanding that some people said you're going to be zapped if you're grounded where there are EMF. You're not. You're just, your body, our experience shows and our experiments show that when a person is grounded in the presence of EMF, the EMF do not penetrate the body, at least the lower frequencies. I cannot say about, like if we go to radio frequencies, what would happen. And so that's why I'm totally with you with coaches. I use earplugs, I'm staying away from my cell phone as much as possible. I totally agree with those things. What I disagree is that to be grounded in an EMF environment, normal EMF environment is bad for you. It's not. I've been doing that for 15 years.
Yes.
And it's been very helpful. It prevents me to have a tooth decay. Anyway, I have my own personal stories, and I can tell you that it's not the case unless you are electro-hypersensitive. Then you have other problems. So
right. Okay.
You're not. But most normal person, absolutely ground yourself in normal environment. You're not going to have any problem.
Yeah. So just very lastly, is there anything you want to share with the viewers before we wind up on this?
Yes, I want to share that there's a lot of misinformation out there, that the people are focusing on one little edge of something, but in general, with normal precautions, grounding is absolutely marvelous. It will prevent you of having so many problems, health problems later. That's why I'm doing this. We've seen people, where this lady, for example, just finishing with this, who was scheduled for surgery because of she's at 92 years old, and she had so bad circulation in her legs, she was scheduled for surgery. She started grounding, and her legs improved so much that by the time that the surgery was scheduled and she got there, they said, "You don't need it."
Yeah.
And she was just, some people are debilitating pain. We had a letter of a lady. She was living in pain for 30 years. Nothing helped her. And she got grounded, and she said, "This is marvelous. Within a week, I'm myself again." Mm-hmm. So when we receive those letters, we know that what we're doing is helping people.
And there is a lot of testimonials on your website, I believe.
A lot of testimonials. You can see that. We had to classify them by different problems, A, B, C, D. So much there are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Listen,
yes.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Dr. Gayton, for being here today, for sharing this knowledge, for doing this work, which is really awesome, because it is important to the information gets out about this, and that the research is done because people do want to have the science on this, and that's really great that you're doing the studies. So I want to thank you.
Can I one more thing? To those people who are interested in research, please reach me. We need more research. We're not saying that we have all the answers. We're saying that we have enough information to know that this is valuable and need more research. And we would like very much welcome and work with people in any institution who would like to do more research.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you that's good that you've said that. And so, Dr. Gayton, thank you so much for being part of this EMF Health Summit. It's really great information you've shared with us.
Thank you. I appreciate your having me on your show. And I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Everything.
And for all of you who've joined us today, thank you also for being part of this movement. Stay tuned for our next session. My name is Lloyd Borrell. Thank you. Bye-bye.